The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
All right. Well, welcome to tonight's Dukes Court. I'm here with marvelous Chris Fletcher, Gary, the Hand of Stone Kinn, and I'm Dave, the Italian Stallion Finoli. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, the Italian Stallion.
Oh, man.
I'm just warning you both. I'm a little bitter today, so just be prepared.
Okay.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
Is there any reason you're bitter? Or
Just a little bit bitter.
all right. So there's going to be a little edge.
Gary, I think I'll be the feeling guy today, I guess.
Yeah, you're gonna have to put on your warm and sensitive coat tonight.
I'll pull it out of the closet somewhere.
All right. Well, we're going to start. College football's coming up. Our vaunted Dukes play one of the first games of the year. It might even be the first. They're playing an FBS game against UMass to start the season. So we have that to look forward to. But what we're going to talk about first is the dominance of certain conferences in college football. Is it good for it? Is parity good? I mean, dynasties where parity may keep the interest over more teams, schools, what have you, over the course of a year, dynasties are okay. In baseball in the 70s, you had Oakland. They won 3 in a row at Dynasty. But the thing was, even though some had more money or not, all had the opportunity basically to do the same thing. The rules were the same. The opportunities were there. Usually the dynasties were more the teams that were able to just perform better, and the front offices that were just better, putting together the teams. The problem I have with college football, and what I'm more concerned about, is there just seem like there are different rules, different levels of ethics in building these dynasties. The SEC and the BCS era, 9 out of 16 championships, 7 of the last 8 BCS championships. They've won 2 of the 4 in the new playoff series. Here's a little doodad. A couple of years ago, the Wall Street Journal did a piece where they basically took their school ratings that they gave to the school, and they plugged them into the different Power 5 conferences. And basically the idea was to look at which schools basically might be taking shortcuts to get titles or to be powers. Now, in this, they ranked, it was over 600 schools that were in this ranking. So the average Big 12 school, which is one of the power conferences, now Texas is ranked 52nd in this, which is pretty good. You're in the mid-600s with everything. Their average ranking is 305. No other school. Baylor's at 189, who had a whole other set of differences that certainly basically fostered a school where their players were committing rape, committing atrocities. Yeah, it was horrible. But schools like TCU, a school you would think would be better, ranked 208. West Virginia, 398. Kansas State, 373. In the SEC, which is our little bastion of athletic success in football, Vanderbilt is ranked 20th. Okay? Good school, good thing. Florida, 58. Texas A&M, 88. Their average ranking is 281. The big power, the big kahuna there is Alabama, who ranks 383. The Pac-12 at 149. It goes on. The ACC actually one of the best. Pittsburgh, 57. Out of their schools, 2/3 of them are in the top 100, with Syracuse at 103, right outside it. And the Big Ten, who often struggles, I think they get their rankings more due to popularity of the school. Because in the big games, other than Ohio State, they usually stumble. But they also have a success rate of 104, where the top 9 schools are in the top 100. So basically, as you look at that, you kind of start to question. And I've seen other rankings where Alabama wasn't even ranked in the thing because of the questionable academic standards of the school. So my problem with the powers there, and why I think I have no problem if the Power Fives go on their own. We've talked about that before. In basketball, add the Big East to it. It's a Power Six. But schools basically decide on their own what the academic standards are, who gets suspended for what academically. That's why you rarely see these kids getting suspended for academic standards in most schools. I think imperatively you need, if you want to build it, because I do think you come down to the national championship game, I don't think there's as much interest in it as there should be, because inevitably Alabama's there and one of 4 or 5 schools in the championship game. And I think that's going to hurt it in the long run. I think you need a commissioner over these schools with pretty much the same standards, because I know it's a money game. I know it's, they screw the kids, but I also think this points up to just a vast difference between even in the Power Five, between how one school can compete and another can't, because one school has ethics and its academic integrity and others don't. But I also think as I said, it is going to start hurting the whole part of the game, because it has it set up right now. And you look at even how they pick the schools for the Final Four. That's no way to decide a semifinal. I mean, you basically are screwing a conference champion. It's happened more times than not, with a runner-up in a conference. I mean, if you're going to do that, go to eight teams, have 5, the 5 conference champions in, and 3 at large. You can't have a committee just deciding at random who's in this tournament. There's no reason Ohio State should not have been in that tournament last year. And I'm not an Ohio State fan by any stretch of the imagination, as goes on there. We've discussed, certainly the atrocities in the Big Ten, but that'll be for another time. But again, that also goes to the standard of what schools are willing to do to have successful sports programs, which is just mind-boggling that even would be a thought. But overall, I don't get as excited about dynasties in college football anymore because of how they come about, because of the wide array of standards that they can use to become a top quality team. It's not cheating. It's not technically against the rules, but to me, it doesn't have the same flavor as the Oakland A's went 3 in a row, or the Penguins going back to back in the past 2 years. Gary, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think a lot of things you said I completely agree with, Dave. I think it's I think from an interest standpoint, from a fan interest standpoint, and from the fact that Alabama's won what they won 4 of the last 6 or 7. I think they won 5 of 9. Yeah. We've got a lot of SEC teams in these things. We do have some ACC teams, which is interesting, which are breaking into it. Clemson primarily recently, and you got some Big Ten teams. You rarely have a Big 12 or a Pac-12, which is interesting in itself. But I think I do think that right now I don't think you're going to see a change immediately, because I think I didn't have a chance to look at the ratings, which I'm probably not fully prepared, but. I think that there is quite a bit of interest still in these games, but I think if Alabama wins a couple more, or it's more SEC teams, I think it's going to drop, and then there's going to have to be a correction. The part I agree with you the most, Dave, is the part about the way they're picking these 4 teams in the situation. I mean, we say we keep talking about the polls are flawed, but we're using the polls to do it. Well, if you got 5 power conferences, then you ought to have a representative from each of those 5.
Right.
And whether they win it or not might be another story because of all the imbalances with academics and everything else. But, I mean, I agree with that. I think that ought to be the first step. And you're right. You need an even number. So, you know, if you've already kind of used some of the bowl games that were critical, I mean, I think what's ended up happening now is some of those other bowl games that used to be important, like the Cotton Bowl and some of those things on New Year's Day, really aren't even paid attention to anymore, even things like the Fiesta Bowl. So, I mean, I think why not just use those bowls as part of the mix? So I agree with that. I think if you really want these power conferences to get representation and you're trying to even the playing field, then give them a shot at the table. You know, I think if you end up, you know, that polling system's always been flawed, let's face it. You know, who's on TV? You know, who's on TV? Who are people seeing all the time? Who's ESPN talking about? Who are people writing about? It influences the polls. You can still use it, but if you got a Power 5, then use the Power 5. You want to pick the other 3 by voting polls? Okay. You finished, you know, in the top 10 or whatever the number. Okay. But at least then I think you're at least giving teams a chance. I'm not really sure how to fix the academic situation. I mean, let's face it. You know, hope my friend from down in New Orleans isn't listening, but LSU, Alabama, Florida, you know, schools like that, they've never had the same challenges that a Duke, you know, even in some cases in North Carolina, you know, University of Washington, it's always been a flawed problem. I don't really know how to fix it. I mean, one way to fix it maybe is to give them a spot at the table for the national championships, that kind of thing. But I'm not sure it'll fix it completely. I have a hard time figuring out why some of these power programs in the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma's made a few times, but not consistently. Texas made it when they set up this system with the BCS back about a decade ago. They don't show up anymore. You know, I mean, you know, West Virginia, you know, they get these tremendous recruits. They're doing well, but they can't seem to ever get anywhere near the championship games. Like, it's kind of hard to figure out. I mean, there's tons of talent you hear about in California and out on the West Coast that go to these Pac-12 schools, but they can never get in there. Now, I know some of it's waiting at strength of schedule and stuff, and that probably leads into our next topic. But, I mean, I'm not sure you're going to be able to fix it quickly. I do think over time, and it goes back to the same thing we've talked about with all these other games. I mean, if you've got so many options, you know, I mean, I'm not sure that the hockey option, playing the game outdoors anymore, that's getting a little stale, but that's out there. Then you got these games on, you know, either New Year's Eve or January 1st and stuff like that. If we keep seeing Alabama every year, you know, Saban, you know, he's just a wonderful guy. You know, we always keep it. He does everything right. Yeah, right. But the bottom line is, if we keep seeing them in those red helmets year after year, the ratings are going to happen. And then that's going to start all the other stuff that we see in all these other games. Like, I mean, the ratings start dropping. You know, other than people in Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson who are thrilled that they're showing up every year, some of these other, you know, places are going to lose some ratings and the sponsors are going to get annoyed. And then I think they're going to have to change the deck. And I think, Dave, your point about changing the deck is probably a very good start to talk about. And it actually may drive up the interest and the dollar stream to all the sponsors of the Fiesta Bowl and the Cotton Bowl and some of those things that really aren't in the mix anymore for these games. And I think it would actually help that. But the academic thing and the standards, I don't know. I think we could be talking about this when we're 85 and we're going to face those challenges. I don't think that's the only reason that the SEC and in some cases the Big Ten breaking all these, you know, quite frankly, laws to be competitive is the reason that it's happening. I mean, I honestly think the Big 12 and the Pac-12 have to look at themselves a little bit. I mean, they really should be able, you know, I guess they use the excuse in the Pac-12, well, you know, our games are late and nobody pays attention to it, so people don't put us high in the rankings. You know, I kind of say baloney to that. You know what I mean? I mean, I think, you know, they're in some big cities out there. Yes, California and L.A. doesn't care as much and they don't pay as much of attention, and maybe in Seattle too. But on the other hand, if they would schedule some of these games against some of these other power conferences, they would beat them once in a while. I'm not really sure that, you know, their excuse is valid. So, and the Big 12 to me is the hardest one to figure out because you got some pretty heavy duty programs in there for years, and their academics aren't the highest either. Let's face it.
No.
But they're not able to compete at all with the SEC. And to me, that goes back, I hate to say it, it's college sports. It goes back to a little bit of management. I mean, are they working as hard in recruiting? It would be a very interesting study that would have to be undertaken as to why the Big 12 in particular, to me, with a lot of programs that are pretty significant, really aren't having a lot of success in this format. They should be doing better in my view, but I don't know if I have the answer as to why that is. So
well,
I think to answer your question, I do think ratings will drop, Dave. I think it will drop if Alabama and some other schools continue to win, if it's all SEC and perhaps ACC and Big Ten dominated. I think that will change the business model. I don't think it'll change it tomorrow, and I don't think it will fix the different ethics and different structures of these universities. But, you take a few of the Pac-10 schools away that are pretty heavy academic-oriented. There's a number of schools in that conference that can get away with murder. The same thing in the Big 12.
Stanford's number one, and that causes that. But the Big 12, the issue is they're the Pittsburgh Steelers of college football. In essence, they all have mainly gone to the stretch or the spread offenses with no defenses. And I think that's the reason the Steelers can't reach a Super Bowl is they haven't built an effective defense. And that's why one of the reasons the SEC succeeds is because they have the best defenses in college football, basically. And I'm still a true believer that inevitably that's going to win titles at the end.
Well, it is, but Dave, honestly, whether we're running a retail store, we're running a company, we're running a sport, it may be very, very difficult to convince those two animals at the linebacker position or strong safety to come here, but that's the job. So you're right.
I agree with you.
I
absolutely agree.
And you're going to lose because of that. And don't complain about the system. You can see you can see the animals that play linebacker in Alabama or Clemson or strong safety. You need to get a few of those somehow. Now, the bending of the rules to do it, I hate it too. It's going to happen. I do think that the way they broke up the system with the different divisions of the Division I programs and stuff like that actually is a good idea. But I do think that, I think it's only a matter of time if it continues to be SEC dominating some of those stuff that we're going to see some change. But I also think some of the conferences in the Power Five have to work a little harder, a little differently to be able to compete, in my view. So
now, Gary, are you ready for some bitterness?
I am. I'm curious because I'm usually the one that carries that into these conversations. So
it's coming, fellas.
All right. Spew, my friend, spew.
All right, guys. Maybe nothing else demonstrates how there are two different stratas of college football than this little stat I'm going to throw out. And I'm going to put this under the heading of food for thought. So get ready to chew on this, boys. Nebraska, a member of your Big Ten, Dave, they're going to spend $3.3 million this year on athlete nutrition. So in addition to the high-quality food at their training table and healthy snacks at fueling stations, that budget covers, you have a director of food service, an executive chef, registered sports dietitian, and 3 assistants, and more than a dozen other staffers. Sounds pretty nice. In Akron, a proud member of the Mid-American Conference, they're going to spend less than $100,000 on athlete nutrition. Most of that's for feeding athletes when the campus dining services are closed. So there's no one there to monitor players' food choices, although the men's basketball players occasionally consult with a nutritionist. She happens to be the wife of the team physician, and she volunteers her time. So you're talking filet mignon versus Chef Boyardee at this point. And it's that sort of untold story that's really affecting college athletics, and it's emblematic of a disparity that's continuing to grow. And here's why this is important, Dave and Gary. Athletes at Division I schools, whether they're on scholarship or not, have been eligible to receive unlimited meals and snacks since 2014. I think that was part of that NCAA deregulation that happened then.
Yeah.
So before that, they had scholarship athletes receive 3 meals a day and maybe a food stipend. So that loosened rules prompted an immediate and really significant increase in nutrition spending among the many schools in the Power 5 conferences. Your Atlantic Coast, the Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, and Southeastern.
Right.
And also a handful of other football bowl subdivision schools. Like, here's some other things. And that brings us to Clemson. I hate Clemson. Gary, do you hate Clemson?
I think that's one of the most egregious violators of all the things that bother us. So I'm with you. Yep.
Okay, so check this out. Clemson opened a $55 million football-only building. It features a dining hall where a player's you got to sit down for this. This is unbelievable. A player's biometric readings help determine his recommended diet for the day. The player puts his thumb on a scanner, steps on the scale, and his personal menu is produced based on the information that's gleaned from the readings. And if a spoiled shit Clemson linebacker is hungry, the chef at the facility will fix him a special dinner if it helps keep him on track.
Because of what he has stepped on, will tell what he is hungry for. Is this what you're telling me?
And I also hate the smug Crimson Tide program. We can all agree on that. You know, you would think that Nick Saban would be happier, you know, especially with all the fiber he and his players are getting. They spend $3.6 million on food for their athletes. That's the most of any program, according to Athletic Business magazine. They also broke ground on a new facility where the players will have access to a demo kitchen where they can learn how to cook nutritiously for themselves. That, my friends, is about all those players at Alabama learn. God, I hate them.
Oh, man.
Look, you know, when the Playboy dynasty was in full swing at Duquesne, we had to choke down some hellacious meals. There was that unidentifiable meat every night. And don't even get me started on stew night. Good God, if you didn't get your order in at San Remo's or Corleone's on a bad dinner night, you were shit out of luck and forced to raid your roommate's snacks. And usually they had lousy snacks. Or maybe that was just my roommate. I don't know. But in any case, that disparity in food is proof disparity in conference is bad for college sports. You are what you eat, fellas. And the NCAA, they're serving us all an open-faced shit sandwich with this one. And that is my bitter words on this topic.
So what you're saying is the Cheetos mystery sandwich labels what I am, because I didn't know what the hell was in that.
Nobody
could really use the thumb thing. It would be an interesting read that I would get as to what I have been eating or should be eating. That would be.
I think mine would say you're dead.
There's an app on that.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It sounds like for you, perhaps, Dave, a little bit too, with the bacon and the thing every day. And I don't know, Fletch, you might have moved to, because of what you're doing, particularly now, moved to a much better universe in that regard. But it is interesting, though, seriously, the disparity in that. I mean, I'm not really sure that makes your athlete better. It may make you a little healthier, but I'm not sure it makes your athlete better.
Well,
it's just a matter of resources. That's really what it comes down to.
That's what I'm about to say. It's amazing, that difference of resources, when you have that kind of disparity, and something, quite frankly, at that aspect of all of this, how different that is, how wide that is. How could you ever expect a level playing field when you have that circumstance?
Well, and that's the point. Are you going to go to Akron, where your coach's wife is going to tell you don't eat a double Mac, a Big Mac and fries, or are you going to be attracted to somewhere where you can put your finger on and it's going to give you a filet mignon? Yeah, I mean, this is the problem.
Yeah,
it's
$3.6 million at Alabama. That's insane.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I mean, you mentioned me earlier, Gare, that you're not sure. You're right. It's not necessarily just because of that. It's not because the Big Ten has decided to hide rapes and attacks by their own members. But what it does is it shows you the culture that these places are willing to go.
Yes.
To build these programs. That's what it says.
Yes.
And when you're telling me you got tens of thousands of kids needlessly at state schools, at private schools, it is what it is. But at state schools, the taxes we're paying, and these kids are going into tens of thousands of dollars of debt because you're spending goddamn $3.5 million, and I know people owe their donations, but they're not all donations. And, you're spending $3.5 million so a player can take a healthy shit every day on good food. And, I mean, that just blows my mind. And it's my favorite sport. That's the thing that pisses me off the most about myself, is I'm so addicted to college football, and by far it is so far out of realm the least ethical sport out there, short of the bare-knuckle fighting.
The real hurt that is going to affect the competitiveness, though, is the fact that, when you got somebody doing that, a Clemson $55 million investment in some stupid building for this, and Alabama 3.6 annual expense a year for this. Like, it really is killing, like, the Pitts of the world. Like, those mid,
exactly.
Like, I mean, Akron would love, just like we joke about, Duquesne getting its brains beat in Morgantown in 2023. That's always part of this. You kind of expect that, but it's that middle tier. That's where you need to get the competitive balance back. And even if they can't compete with it, you got a huge problem. So, I think ultimately, what's going to happen is people are going to say, in certain markets, the college sports are so much different than professional sports from the standpoint of, college football is followed quite a bit differently. A lot of the passionate college football following is in fairly small markets, Arkansas, central Oklahoma, the South, but if you want people to watch it, you need the big markets. People are going to get tired of seeing LSU or, Ohio State or Clemson or Alabama year after year, but none of those mid ones ever get in there. That's the thing that makes the college basketball tournament so appealing to people. Everybody roots for the underdog, and Florida Gulf Coast goes in there and upsets 4 people, right? You don't have that in football anymore. So that's where the disparity, that disparity is really going to affect. Those mid-majors are not getting a chance. And I'm not necessarily saying that the problems here are just because the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are not working that hard, but they should be able to make a dent in that. And the interesting part of your analysis, Fletch, would be, what do those schools spend? If they're doing something similar and they're not competing, then I don't have as much sympathy. But if they're not even anywhere near in that ballpark, kind of gives you an example about what the cash flow is and what the underlying balance sheet would be.
But they are spending the money. West Virginia is one of the most profitable athletic programs in the country. I saw something earlier. It was amazing. But I really genuinely think, and you're right, Gary, they need to make the adjustments, but they've sold out for the spread offense. I don't think that's sustainable to maintain a championship level, because inevitably the Alabamas of the world, the people that are building the defenses, are defeating this, and they're defeating it consistently. And I just think you need a change of philosophy with that. It's exciting, and the reason they do it is it's exciting, fun to watch, brings people into the building, but it Alabama football games, unless you're an Alabama fan. Now, I won't watch an SEC game until the end when they're in the championship round. But Alabama's not a fun team to watch, but they win,
right?
Because they have great defenses.
Well, they're also deeper than anybody else too.
Absolutely. They're starting, or their second
it's a
team
perfect
would probably be a top 20 team.
Yeah, I mean, people, they go there, and their ability to recruit is just beyond that of anybody else. So I'll give them their props on that. You're right; they don't play exciting games, but you're right, Dave. I mean, it really comes down to having that defense, and that's and that's what wins championships.
Well,
so we've been told all our lives.
The distribution is a big advantage, though, guys. I mean, when you're on CBS every Saturday, which the world's changed now with all this streaming and demand and that kind of stuff, but still.
Right, but Gary, then if that were the case, why isn't Notre Dame top of the heap every year anymore?
Well,
it's more than TV.
Agreed, but I do think that distribution keeps them in the mix, though, don't you? I mean, I agree that maybe they're not top of the heap anymore, but
it keeps them in the mix, but their academic standards are, in my eyes, prohibiting them from having a successful college football program against these other schools.
Right. All I was trying to say about the distribution, though, is I think that continues to feed the animal about the disparity. And I guess, unfortunately, television looks for its returns and looks for its ratings. And the casual fan doesn't really care about half the stuff we're talking about. They just want a football game.
They want to watch their team.
Right. They want to watch their team, and they want to watch some excitement. Now, you're right. I think some of the SEC teams are not as much fun to watch, and that's a huge factor here. But the Big 12's on what? They're on kind of ESPN. They're scattered around. ESPN, FS1. They're 4 o'clock FS1 usually on Saturdays, aren't they? Pac-10. Yeah. Pac-10's problem is just clock. Their games start at 4, 7, or 10, And the big
right.
media markets don't pay attention to it, which is why they never get high ranked in the BCS. And they never beat the teams probably for the football reason that you described, Dave. So,
right.
I mean, we've talked about a lot of complex problems in a lot of sports. I mean, college football's got some serious complex problems that are not going to be easy to fix. And I think, it's going to be a while before we start to see some of the fix for parity and other stuff here before.
Right.
Well, here's the other thing that's going to happen, guys, is, and this happened with Notre Dame. People would tune in to root against them. And I think before you see the ratings drop for Alabama, that's going to happen. Yeah. People are just going to watch just because they want them to lose and to enjoy that moment. So I think it's going to take a little bit longer for the ratings to really hurt them.
I agree.
Well, one point you made, Gare, that I thought was probably one of the biggest ones here are the middle level.
They're the ones that are getting hammered
programs.
Yep.
I mean that they seem to just be stuck in neutral, and it's tough for an NFL city, a big city school like Pitt. They will draw if they win.
Right.
But they obviously did not like the kind of player that Dave Wannstedt was bringing in when they were drawing, when they were competing for conference championships. But they were also at the top of the NCAA rung with the rest. And I really believe that was the reason Dave Wannstedt was let go, because it was becoming an embarrassment to the school. And I think that as much as anything. I don't know how you fix that. I mean, on one end you respect Pitt, but on the other end you're stuck in neutral.
Well, I mean, the ACC is interesting to think about. When I was thinking about this, trying to get ready for this, in the ACC, you're seeing a lot of representation coming out of, and even in the championship series, you're seeing possibly a Florida State, possibly a Miami, possibly a Clemson.
Yeah.
Not seeing any Virginia, Duke, North Carolina, Pitt, even Virginia Tech anymore. You're not seeing them anymore. They're not in the mix anymore.
No.
And even in the conferences, the problems we're talking about are existing even within the conferences. Like, I mean, Kansas and Kansas State in the Big 12 are terrible. They're not winning anything. I mean, they're not even getting close to anything. What happened to Iowa and some of the schools in the Big 10, too? You're not seeing them. Maryland went in there. They're making a fortune. They're terrible. They're not even close to anything. I think some of the administrations have bought out for the money. They, like Maryland obviously moved to the Big 10 for the money. One of the people I knew is a basketball fan in Maryland. Something like $40 million a year just for going into the conference. I guess they didn't really care. I guess they felt their fans would fill the building for basketball or football because they were playing Michigan or they're playing Ohio State. And maybe it's true. Maybe it's happening. They kind of sold out for the money. They almost don't even seem to care that they're in the mix for a title.
Well, they were close to bankruptcy at the time.
I mean, they had no choice but to make that move.
Yeah.
Well, my point is they still sold out and not fixed the situation. They took the money.
Right.
They didn't care about
a whole bunch of
to play in the BCS. So, I mean, I think now that might have been really dire with as bad as they were, but there's a bunch of programs in there that you're not seeing them really at all compete. They're just not even competing for the conference title. So they're, that is, you think the conferences would think about that a little bit more than they do. And I think that may end up, the more I think about it, that may end up being the pressure more than anything. If you were SEC middle tier, Mississippi State, Mississippi, some of them, Arkansas, aren't you going to start complaining soon?
Nah, you're going to cash your check.
Gates are big. They cash the check.
You're cashing your check and you're happy.
I guess. Then don't complain about the imbalance in the.
Right.
They can't ever complain then about the imbalance in the.
No, and they don't. I never hear Pitt complaining about it.
You don't hear much about it. You don't.
No.
You don't.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, you got that going on, and you got a lot of controversy about what the new Power 5 setup has done to the old rivalries, where now the former independents, the former conference rivals, are now in different conferences. It really affects this area in particular. I mean, we're gonna see Pitt Penn State on September 8th for the last time at the minimum 10 years. At the minimum, Penn State doesn't seem to want it. And, they're unless Pitt's going to throw out, well, you can have 2 or 3 out of 3 games or 3 out of 4 games, it's just not going to happen. because they can draw a Akron, they can draw a Temple, and they can basically bring them into their 107,000 seat stadium whenever they want. Understand the business aspect of it, but after next year, a great rivalry goes away. In fact, it's not important to this generation anymore. Pitt Penn State. I mean, to us, it was the
game.
High level of rivalry.
Yep.
But to this generation, they don't give a damn. They considered WVU their rival, which has gone away too. And I'm going to say something here, and then we'll push it on. I'm going to say something that might not, and I've had more people disagree with me than agree with me. And you know, we even today we have members of the state Congress talking about trying to force Pitt and Penn State to play, which is stupid. I don't give a damn if they ever play these two schools again. Good for the area, good for TV ratings. Don't get me wrong, but I don't get fired up about it. Penn State doesn't want to play them. That's fine. They're in the ACC. They need to concentrate on winning the ACC, on making ACC teams their thought process. And if Penn State wants to play us, I love the game. I'm excited about it. 2 years ago, it was one of the great experiences in my life being at that game, the Pitt victory. But I'm not going to get bent out of shape if they don't play. I think it's stupid. And I forget there was a state a few years ago who did force a renewal of a rivalry, which I thought was just asinine. You have more things to think about than this. But personally, I don't care if they ever play. I've seen it. I've enjoyed it. I want to root for Pitt every week. That's my main goal. And whoever they play that week is the team I hate, and is the team that's going to piss me off. In the Big Ten, I love Michigan. So whoever Michigan plays that week is the team that's going to piss me off, is going to be the rival. So we're going to hear a lot of talk about this. Every time I mention this on Facebook, you know, I get eaten alive because people just want to go by any means to keep this series alive. And quite frankly, I understand. Why would Penn State want to split every 2 years a gate when it can have an easy win against somebody who, you know, is going to give them 107,000 there? Fletch, do you have any bitterness towards this?
Well, I'm going to start off saying something positive, and that's that I like rivalries. And really, that's the one thing that the NCAA does better than the NFL. I mean, you think about it. The Steelers and their hated rival, the Ravens, they play twice a year. The Steelers get to face the Browns twice. They get to see the Bengals explode twice. You know, in college, you play your key rival only once. And I think we're diminished by conference realignment when it comes to these rivalries. And that I hate. You know, for me, a rivalry has to have emotion. You know, you think about like in Alabama and Auburn, where you get a crazed fan actually kill some trees. That's some pretty crazy shit there. And I also like when mascots are kidnapped. That's to me is very cool. And that, boys, is what major college sports
the Duke.
is.
What was his name?
Absolutely.
What was the Duke's name?
What
was his name when we were there?
Oh.
Basketball is the one I'm thinking about.
Oh, yes. The plucking of the hawk.
Yeah.
I'm going to Fletch, don't get me in a jam here, but yeah, I'm with you though. So, yeah.
But you know, here's the thing though, it has to be competitive on some level. So if you're a fan of one team, Dave, you're right. I mean, your whole month should be ruined if you lose to your rival, you know. And on the other hand, if you win, you know, a win over your rival, it's like overeating, you know, it's like when you're overeating a great burger to the point where you burp it up and you continue to taste it over and over again. Dave, you know what I'm talking about. You've all appreciated
I remember you burping on that one.
Yeah, especially when it involves bacon, Dave. I know you're there.
Damn straight. There's nothing better than the bacon burp. Go ahead.
So that being said, to me, realignment is a real kick in the nuts to the rivalry system. And here are the ones that I miss. You know, Dave, you mentioned that the new generation likes the Pitt WVU. I do too. You know, it was always the final week in November. And here's the thing, guys. Can you believe it was 11 years ago when that 4-7 Pitt team knocked off WVU and cost them a shot at the national championship? I can't believe it's that long ago.
What a moment.
Texas A&M. That used to be another dependable Thanksgiving holiday game. They even played 2011. And both were charter members of the Southwest Conference and the Big 12. They should be playing. Nebraska, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the preeminent powers in the Big 8 for 3 decades. Here's a little stat for you guys. At one point, the winner of that game won the Big 8 in 31 of 36 seasons. That's how big that game was. Florida, Miami, maybe Florida State, Miami is the better known rivalry, but for me, this was a good one too. They played from 1938 to 87. That's a lot of tradition that you lose when that happens. Plus, I hate both of those teams. I really do. So one way or another, I was going to feel good when the game was over. And then Arkansas, Texas. One of your favorite coaches, Dave, the Frank Royals, and then you also had Darrell Royal in that rivalry. Remember, what was it, 69 when they number 1 Texas defeated number 2 Arkansas? You had President Nixon.
President by helicopter.
He declared Texas a national champ. This is a few years before he declared he wasn't a crook, but, at the same time, he did that. So here's my hope. Maybe Trump will declare something about the winner of the Pitt-Albany game. That's the greatest team he has ever seen. Believe him. I want my rivalries. I really hate realignment.
Well, but the rivalry, the thing about it now, it's at the beginning of the year. It means nothing to how your season is going to end up. It's nice to beat Penn State, but if you lose 4 ACC games, your season is useless.
True. But didn't we always look forward to that one weekend toward the end of the year when you knew you had USC, UCLA, or USC, Notre Dame, or one of those great rivalries? It always seemed to happen on that one weekend, and it just got everybody fired up.
It was awesome when it meant something. I would agree with you. When it meant something, it was awesome.
I completely agree. Yeah. Yep.
Gary, you've always been so enamored with the Temple St. Joe's rivalry. I know that lights a fire in Philadelphia every year.
College football here is just kind of a non-event, and it's interesting. It's completely a pro town, but
hey, you got Army Navy. Come on.
I love Army Navy. That's my favorite game of the year. That is my number 1 on my bucket list is to go to an Army Navy game. Number 1.
Well, I want to see you dive from doing push-ups, Dave.
I will do 1 push-up at the end of the game.
Well, if
Army loses,
I almost got a chance, Dave. I almost got a chance to go last year, but Patty's father passed away.
Oh.
And my brother got some tickets because he knew somebody that was an Army graduate, but Patty's father passed, so we missed it. That would be a fun event, I think. And I saw Navy play in Virginia a number of years ago, and it was the coolest thing. When they scored the touchdown, all 11 guys do the push-ups. It was really kind of a cool thing. And they were organized like the Soviets in terms of the pregame stuff, like the Soviet.
So you're saying it's a communist infiltration?
No, I'm just saying that
Is that what I'm hearing, Fletcher?
Because of their synchronization.
Oh, Comrade Gary, please continue.
Trump is going to call me, Dave. Thank you.
All right.
I mean, I think the biggest problem is beyond just the realignment. It's, again, the bastardization for television and money, and it's really wrecked a lot of these college football rivalries bad. I mean, even in the ratings of USC doesn't play UCLA last anymore. How egregious is that? I mean, that's egregious
I agree.
in itself. It's just another game.
That is because it's in the conference. There is no excuse for that.
That is a great. But look at the schedule this year. They play Stanford last year. They did USC.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disgraceful, and it's because
that's got to be
the ratings.
Stanford's got to be counted.
They're trying to drive the ratings up for that final game as they're going to the Pac-10 championship. They know who's going to be there. They adjust the schedule accordingly. I know they plan these things year in advance, but still, I mean, I think I don't. Unfortunately, I read something. It was one of the Big 12 programs, and the guy said, "Well, how do you expect me?" And he's probably right. He said, "How do you expect me to schedule kind of a regional rivalry where it's dangerous, particularly if the program's got some talent like Pitt? I gotta have a cupcake. I gotta have one tough opponent early, non-conference. I gotta have a cupcake or two to keep my record high, and then I got 9 conference games. I only play 12. How do you expect me to do this?" He's right.
And it's right. It is the correct thing to do. I mean, don't get me wrong. It may hurt them when Condoleezza Rice tries to pick the Final Four for the college football playoff. I don't know if she's still on the committee, but by damn, that has a lot of pull when you're trying to impress people without much college football background.
Yeah.
Did you want Janet Reno instead? Is that what you're lobbying for here?
I was. Unfortunately, I'm not sure with the dig up of the grave that would be an effective vote there.
I think the one thing that could change it, seriously, guys, is if you change a little bit about that rating system. Now, I don't know how you put a rating just because Pitt and West Virginia or Pitt and Penn State or Arkansas and Texas were a big rivalry. But, some of those programs are still pretty good. I mean, you shouldn't penalize somebody for losing that game, perhaps, and maybe you weighted a little different. I don't know. I'd have to think about it a little bit more. I do think something's lost. I really do. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Fletch. I mean, I think, the Florida ones, they were all hateable. There was all legal problems with all of them. The coaches were completely obnoxious. They were all hateable. But, you wanted to see those games. And all the ones you classic mentioned in the 70s and 80s, and including Pitt Penn State, I mean, if that's lost for decades, I mean, something's really lost about that. But, I think the ratings under a certain age group, I don't think they really care. I mean, I kind of compare it a little bit to the NBA games. You go to an NBA game here in Philly, I don't think some of the people there that are under a certain age group know who even the other team is. Like, I don't even think they know what city they're from. But it's all the show. It's all I'm at the show, take the pictures on my phone, that kind of stuff. I kind of feel like a little bit of some of that in college football now, too, the people watching it at least. Like, I don't think they really care so much that rivalry game is gone. But, I mean, I think you can probably fix it a little bit. I don't know if the schools really care about fixing it, Dave. Your point about Penn State, I think, is really what it comes back to. I mean, I don't think politicians should be getting involved in it. This is business. Okay, the business has changed. You got these power conferences. That's what the TV pays the money on. That's where the sponsors sign up. It's going to change the business model. I mean, I think it's hurting college basketball, too. We're talking about football here, but think about college basketball. I mean, it's really hurt. I mean, it really wrecked the Big East. I mean, it wrecked the Big East more than anything because you put all of a sudden you had 18 teams, and it's cumbersome. I mean, now all of a sudden you got Syracuse and Georgetown not playing 1 year at all. I mean, how do you have that? I mean, and I think, unfortunately, this is where TV just continues to bastardize all this stuff. And you hope the conferences would push back. I mean, I guess it's just so much. It must just come down to so much money coming in from the TV contract. It's probably why previous topic, Alabama and some of these SEC schools are dominating. And I don't know if it's an easy fix. I wish it would come back. I think the way to do it is to not reward somebody for putting a cupcake on the schedule to keep the schedule the record at 5-0 by the time you go into the conference thing. And if the conference is really considered to be that tough, then all this number crunching we do today for how many times a guy's going to swing at a 2-1 fastball, I got to believe in football you could do it too. You got to be able to come up with some kind of power ranking if you scheduled, a mid-major. A Pitt going in to play a Penn State, and whether Penn State beats them or not, you got to be able to factor that into this. And honestly, if you give a reward for it, right? You're not going to. I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
They have it with the RPI. They just don't use it.
Well, that's right, and I think that's my point. Like, use the tool that you developed to not penalize somebody or not reward somebody for putting the Akron on the schedule versus a Pitt. Then I think it might change the mindset a little bit. The marketing of it, though, to me is a little more problematic. I think you're right. I think, Dave, I don't really care. If Pitt's in the ACC, win the ACC. I agree. Yeah. You can build some rivalries there, but I think the marketing of it, other than a few names, Alabama, Auburn, even Notre Dame, USC, Fletch, you're right. Last year I don't think I ever saw any promotion for that game at all.
No, I don't remember it either.
Right. So, I think the marketing of it's a little more problematic. But, Notre Dame should be rewarded. And even they, if you look at their schedule now, because of the way this, bowl championship system calculations and rankings and and all that kind of stuff is done. Even their schedule is nowhere near as tough as it used to be. There's a number of chumps in there.
Right.
So that's the business model that has developed because of all the things that have happened, and you can easily take a look back at it over a couple of years and reward some teams for playing that regional rivalry. But the problem with football to me has always been in both pro and college football to try to fix problems is half the people. The game is only part of the experience. We're looking at that, I think, the three of us, and I think a lot of people are looking at that strategically, what's going on. A lot of people just don't care at football. They want to get there on Thursday. They want to tailgate. They want to have fun with their friends, that kind of stuff. They don't care if it's an Akron helmet or a Pitt helmet.
And I think in the pros, the whole thing of fantasy football has really changed the way people watch football. People now they're rooting for their fantasy football teams rather than their hometown teams in a lot of cases.
And for the red zone. That's what the red zone is.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Red zone tells you that more than anything. Going to all
Right.
the touchdowns and the scores and attention span issues aside, that's why that's thriving. That is one of the reasons that's thriving.
Well, Matthew Siciliano's ears. If you ever watch his ears, it's a frightening little thing.
It is frightening, very frightening. But I will say one thing that you can do to solve that is have 5 automatic bids, because then it becomes you winning your conference.
Yep.
Right.
And it doesn't matter who you play.
Hey, that's the thing tonight I agree with the most that's been said. I completely agree.
The
power conference, give them a bid.
I will say one thing about Pitt Penn State as a rivalry. We loved it because the rivalry was at its best when we were growing up. But if you look at it as a whole, it was a rivalry between 1975 and, say, 1987. Before that, it was never a rivalry. It was either Pitt dominating or it was Penn State dominating. After that, in the 2000s or the 1990s, it was Penn State dominating. So it really, we look at it lovingly, but in 100 games, maybe for a 12 to 13 year stretch, was it truly a rivalry?
Yep.
And I think
it was our formative years. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. Yeah. That's true. In that one. Now there were others that Fletch mentioned that were a lot more even.
Exactly.
Because the conference changes and all that stuff. But you're right, Dave. In terms of that specific one, you're right on.
Yeah. And I look at it as for Pitt to succeed, they have to win the ACC, and that's why I focus. As I said, I know a lot of nice Penn State people, but there are a hell of a lot of smug ones that are going to be in that Heinz Field on September 8th. That's going to really piss me off, and that's going to be the joy of wanting to win that game. But in the long run, I want to win that conference, that division, the Coastal. I think we're in the Coastal.
Yep. And that's where the success of the program will be built on, not the upset of Penn State. Right.
Yeah. But now we got our big things of the week. We're in our lightning round here. Okay. And
all right.
My biggest thing has changed. It's changed dramatically in the last 24 hours.
I know where you're going, Dave.
You know where I'm going.
You're going. Just because you own your show doesn't mean you can be first. But
I gotta be, man. I gotta be. Because I'm pumped. I'll give you the prediction. I'm gonna throw you the prediction first. But I remember at 78 when I accepted my thing to go to Duquesne. I was kind of excited because they were doing away with club football. They were going to be at the NCAAs. And the joy was watching Gallaudet. Okay? A lot of respect for the team, but it's not like going to a major school. Okay? We were a low-end Division III school. Then we became a low-end Division I AA school because of the requirement that you had to have a Division I football program to keep your Division I basketball. I've always dreamed of 1941 when the computer years later ranked Duquesne the number 1 team in the nation. In research, I love researching about the 1936 season. They beat number 1 Pitt. They went to the Orange Bowl. Can you imagine 2 Pittsburgh schools on New Year's Day bowl games in 1 year? Pitt at the Rose Bowl, Duquesne at the Orange Bowl. I've always loved that. but you know damn well we were never going to see that. And I know damn well they're going to get their ass kicked at West Virginia. And I'm goosebumping. If you saw me now, you'd see, like, goosebumps as big as my nose. And that was meant for a cheap comment, Fletcher.
That's
I threw a softball up at you.
You did. And I chose to take the pitch.
All right. But, I mean, we're playing one of the top programs in the nation for the first time since the 1940s. And I'm pumped up. I know it's not going to lead to anything more than, you know, we'll fill the 2,500 seat Rudy Field. But I've always envisioned one day hoping to see Duquesne and Pitt playing the opening game at Heinz Field, and that's now a reality because of this announcement this week with Duquesne going to West Virginia in 2023. I know it's stupid to be so pumped up at what should be a laughable game, but I am. I apologize. I feel that way. And
they have 425,000 reasons to play that game.
Exactly. It's good for the program. It's good for recruiting.
It's a big paycheck. It's a beautiful thing.
I love it. You know, I didn't mean to take your thunder, Gary.
Well, it's okay. I mean, that's gonna if we're doing a Pittsburgh sports show here, that ought to be the moment of the week for the next month and a half, in my view.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you, but I don't know. My next year is Fletch next on this because
I'm going with you.
Look, I got to say, beyond I think the thing I'm impressed by is a couple things. Number one, considering when we were all there as blood brothers, right? The administration of Duquesne, give them a standing ovation. When we were there, they wouldn't have had a clue about something like this. Okay? They wouldn't even have thought about this someday. So maybe the school's rebounding, maybe all that kind of stuff, better administration, stuff like that. But getting your brains beat in is one thing. But at least they thought about the aspect of this from both a marketing standpoint. And honestly, this year, too. Opening Dave, I think they actually do play the first full game of the college football season. I think it's 5:30 p.m. 2 weeks or a week.
So they have the official one.
The official first one, exactly.
Okay.
And then going to Hawaii, honestly, that's going to get some press attention from even like an ESPN. Good thinking. Okay?
Fabulous.
Number one. Number two, yeah, they're going to get their brains beat in. But at least the fact of the matter is for all those B-minus kids, honestly, it will matter. It will matter if they continue to sustain it. Don't just stop here, okay? Look for some more, okay? I mean, honestly, maybe there will come the day where they'll have actually enough of and then they're in an area where the football talent is still deep. So, I mean, I think you look out on every front. Yeah, they're going to probably lose 62-7. Who cares? I mean, at this point, and I'm not saying go for the money. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, but I think in this particular situation, in such a football-interested area, in such a football hotbed, you know, and honestly, just because they're going to get their brains beat in by a BCS type of team, you know, the fact of the matter is it's going to stimulate quite a bit of interest and quite a bit of talk, and that helps as much as anything for a school that, quite frankly, has struggled to get out of its own way, particularly with that sports program. So, I mean, I think that the success should be taken off to the coaches there and some of the administration that for the last 10 years they've been extremely competitive. They won a number of titles. They've been really competitive. They're getting better athletes. They're getting recruits and transfers from some big-time schools. I mean, a lot of things came together to have this happen, and honestly, that's my moment of the week. It'd probably be the moment of the week for a lot of, particularly as the college football season starts, it probably ought to be my moment of the week as well, Dave, for a million reasons. So I'm pumped as well. I mean, I don't have goosebumps, quite frankly, the size of a golf ball. You know, maybe we need to. I hope you're okay there, Dave. But I do think that I think with the work that we're doing here, we all ought to get together and get some kind of van or SUV or stuff like that. We all ought to head down there, and we ought to go down there, and we ought to do a podcast from there on the Thursday.
Oh, I like the idea.
During the tailgating.
Great idea.
2023. That's what I think we ought to do. So
I love the idea. It's done. It's a done deal.
I think we should do it.
You're there. We are there.
We're there, man. We're there.
September the 8th.
Love it.
2023. So.
All right.
Beautiful.
Mr. Fletcher.
Well, I'll give you mine. I was gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna try to be a little bit different. But I'm gonna harken back to one other thing. You guys remember before the ESPN days, where you would tune in and you would watch the college football score show, and they would go through all the things, and how every week they would talk about Slippery Rock. Remember that?
Yep.
They would always talk about the Slippery Rock game. So maybe Duquesne is the new Slippery Rock. Who knows?
I love it.
So last week on my predictions, I was close. Remember I said the Tiger would take the PGA? Yeah, I mean, he made it interesting for sure. So, but my story of the week's also a golf story, and it's at the Wyndham Open, where Brett Snedeker became the 10th player in PGA history to break 60. And here's the thing that's amazing about that guy. He started his round off with a bogey, and he also missed a 3-foot putt, or else he would have tied or even broken the record of 58 by Jim Furyk. He strung together 10 birdies and an eagle. He held that eagle in from like 176 yards. It was beautiful. So he's the fourth PGA Tour player to break 60 in the past three years. This guy, he's not a busher, Dave. He is not a busher. And the other thing is, we should find out. We should find out what he ate that day, though. Maybe he stopped by Clemson and he got part of his still up there.
Had there in that $55 million building. Yeah.
Hey, it's an advantage even on the PGA Tour.
But a 59 when you bogey the first hole. That's amazing.
Oh man, unbelievable. I like it. I'm going back to back. I'm going back to back to you, Fletch. You're now going to tell us your prediction of the week.
Well, guys, this one's we knew this was coming, and that's with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, they made it official. What we've known for a while, they're cutting back on the print edition of the paper. There'll be no more Saturday or Tuesday editions. So my prediction is a pretty easy one here. The high school football fans are going to be really pumped because that was one of the great things on a Saturday morning. You get the paper, you open it up, you see first of all how your alma mater did, and you look see who are the 100-yard rushers. No more. That's gone. You can get it online, but it's not the same. So it's another bit of tradition that we're losing. And while we're on the subject of high school football, I just want to wish Zach Hayward, the new coach at my alma mater, Blackhawk High School, the best for the season. Zach's dad and I, Greg, we graduated together, and let's bring those Cougars back to prominence. And maybe they just need better food. Maybe that's what the problem was out in Blackhawk the past few years.
Very cool. I like that. So you're predicting a WPAL championship at Blackhawk.
Well, I'm predicting they'll win a few more games than they did last year.
All right. Mr. Gary.
Yeah, this is where I struggle the worst. So in terms of predictions, because I don't have any guts or I don't know, whatever the reason is. But I think 2 baseball series coming up, Oakland at Houston, Dodgers at Seattle. I honestly think, as I think about these series, I think both of the AL West teams are going to show that although they've had nice seasons here, they're really not contenders. I mean, Oakland's had a lot of wins. They've beaten the hell out of the Angels. They've beaten the hell out of some teams in the AL Central. I think they're going to get in there against Houston. I haven't looked at the pitching matchups yet, so maybe I'm just speaking from guts. I think Houston's going to embarrass them this weekend. I have a feeling the Dodgers are going to embarrass Seattle, too. Not that I'm a Dodger fan, but by the same token, I think the Dodgers still have really not put it together this year. Now they have almost too much personnel. But I think my prediction of the week is I think there'll be some questions more than there's been. Everybody loves the Oakland story. I do, too, from all the problems in baseball. But the reality of the matter is I'm not really sure that team's all that good, although they have added to the bullpen. The ballpark, I think, is helping them. It always does. I think Oakland and Seattle fall back quite a bit, and I honestly think that I think it will show that they have had nice stories this year, but they're really not in the same league as some of the top echelon teams in the AL. I got one other prediction, which I guess is a fantasy prediction. Maybe I've not eaten enough of that food, and I don't have a thing I can put my thumb in to tell me. But I think my prediction is in 2024, Dave, I would say around December the 1st, Alabama will announce that they are coming to Duquesne to play, and they're going to play on the Bluff. They will play Duquesne on the Bluff in the opening game of the season. You know, I'm going to say probably like September 1st or something over Labor Day weekend. And they will do that because, quite frankly, that will help them pad their schedule to win their 17th straight national championship at that point. And Duquesne will take it. They will take it because they will actually make more than the $425,000 they will get when they go down to Morgantown and get slaughtered. But that's my prediction. That's my long-term prediction that that's probably likely to come next. So,
all right, I like it. And mine is also going to be twofold here, and it's going to be with your favorite sport, Gary, soccer. I know you're an aficionado.
I'm looking to learn from you, Dave, and I don't know. I'm not sure, Fletch, if you're a big expert on that.
What's soccer? What's that? Because that's that game you play with your feet. Okay.
I got a lot to learn. So, yes.
Well, it's going to be twofold. Last week, you know, I'm a junkie. I'm up at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday when most sleep to watch my European English soccer games, and my beloved Liverpool, which fell in love with because of my love of the Beatles in the 70s. So it really had no interest in soccer. But when I'm picking a team, I pick the team of the Beatles, which I don't even know if the Beatles like Liverpool, but, you know, you like.
Oh, they did.
But anyway.
They did.
Anyways, this is going to be the year. They used to be the New England Patriots of European soccer, of British soccer, and kind of lost their way a little bit. And their head coach Klopp he's a great interview. He's just an interesting press conference, but he's put together the most powerful team in the world. You heard me. Did I say in England? Did I say England?
Ooh.
They will win their first English Premier League championship in probably 25 years, and they will win. They will beat the Barcelona, the cheap Barcelona team that beat them by cheating, I tell you, in the European championships. They're going to win a double, my friend. I'm making that prediction now. Are you marking?
Well, tell you what, Dave.
Here's
the thing. If that happens, I will serenade you with "You'll Never Walk Alone." If that happens, the official Liverpool song.
I've made a mental note. It is. They honor Jerry Lewis every week by singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," the also famed song of the Labor Day telethon of your youth.
I have chronicled all this, gentlemen. I have this.
You know, and this is what's pissed.
Both.
This is the thing that pissed me off about that song, by the way, Gary. I always got pumped up by it. I get goosebumps again. Maybe I have a blood problem, but I get goosebumps every week when I hear it. Till my wife looked at me and said, "What the hell are you getting fired up about? Jerry Lewis, that's Jerry Lewis's song." I said, "No, this cannot be Jerry Lewis's song." And then I'm sitting there listening to it without the fans screaming, and it was Jerry Lewis's song. Crushed me. She crushed me, I tell you.
That's all I'm going to say to you.
That's what I hear now. I don't hear Liverpool people screaming. I hear, Oh, my. And my other prediction, very quickly in soccer, in U.S. soccer, in the MLS, if you haven't had a chance to look at Wayne Rooney's phenomenal play to win a game against Orlando for D.C. United, Wayne Rooney, the great Manchester United player for years, comes to America, runs like a wild man. The goaltender's out of position. Seconds left. The score's tied at 2. And Orlando's about to kick a ball from half field into the net to win the game. Why is the goalie out of the goal? I don't know. But Rooney comes from out of nowhere, slide tackle, picks it up, then kicks the ball almost halfway down the field to a guy named Acosta who hits it in over his head and wins the game 3-2 as time runs out.
That was the greatest goal I've ever seen.
Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Oh, that was phenomenal.
Sounds like I need to. Sounds like I need to.
It's going to be the thing that's going to get DC United not only in the playoffs, but they're going to win the MLS championship.
Oh, come on!
You do not have to serenade me with that. I'm making that.
I have no song for you on that one.
As well, correct? That would be an absolute first as well, right?
Oh man, That just nudged them into a playoff spot with that win. But
must be the sun is shining very nicely in D.C. right now. Yeah.
Don't let the sun come down on me. That's the song I want you to sing, Gary, if D.C. United wins.
You know,
go out and John for me.
At all. You don't want to hear me sing in any way, shape, or fashion. I have a funny story about that, so I don't know how much time we have, but you don't want to hear me sing at all. I had the same voice.
Is it a 5-minute funny story?
I have the same voice when I was 7 years old as I have now. I'm sitting in the back of the Catholic church, and the nuns come back, and they're like, Gary, why aren't you singing? God loves every child. All children's voices are beautiful. I'm like, oh, no, sister, I got this raspy cigarette voice, and I'm 7 years old. She's like, no, you need to sing. Every child has a beautiful voice. I'm like, okay. So we're singing Kumbaya or some other thing we've all done. We're probably still all doing it, I guess, in one form or another. And we break the bar, and somebody messes up, or whatever, drops their, rosary or whatever. Nun comes back. She sits behind me. She goes, that's okay, Gary. You don't have to sing. It scarred me for life, Fletch. So you want to know my bitterness? There's one of the reasons. You know what I mean?
You don't know what music's like, Gary, unless you hear Fletcher singing Kumbaya at his tiki bar.
I think we're going to have to do that. I'm planning on coming out there in the fall, so we're going to have to get together after all this work that we're doing. And Fletch, I need to see you do it. Okay, I need some inspiration to try to start singing again. So you'll have to get me started on that. So perhaps you too, Dave. Just don't do the Jerry Lewis yell first. So
well, we could do it. I'll do the Jerry Lewis. I've never heard him sing Kumbaya on his Labor Day special, but maybe he has. Maybe he has. I'd fall asleep.
Well, I think you did a duet with Charo singing it. I'm not sure. But...
I did a duo with Charo too, Fletch.
Oh, wow. Well, I don't know that this is the time or place for that. I certainly don't think Patty wants to hear that. Oh, man. Can I tell you guys a little good news talking about the hard work we've done?
Please.
Yes. Our book, Unlucky 21, the saddest stories in Pittsburgh history. Well, we had the good news this week. Arcadia Publishing, one of the nation's largest publishers, is going to pick up the book and is going to publish it. And what they're going to do with it, we've also had an agreement that Giant Eagle, which is a behemoth of a company in Pittsburgh and just, is the standard for grocery stores in this area. They're going to be our exclusive seller of our book Unlucky 21, which is going to be huge. They have some big events, which we'll get into a little more as we get more details with it. And all our royalties are going to go to one of the great foundations, one of the great charities, the Josh Gibson Foundation. And this is just going to generate a whole lot more for them. And I couldn't be more thrilled with this. And plus the fact, all the great work that all 13 authors have done, including you two, is just going to be seen by a lot more people. So I couldn't be more excited by this. And congratulations to you two.
Congratulations to you, Dave. You've been the point man on this. You had the idea. You talked to the parties involved, particularly the Gibson Foundation. And honestly, I'm glad to reconnect with both of you. Not that I'm being sympathetic here, Fletch, but I'm glad to be.
Don't make me cry, Gary. Do not make me cry.
It's a very interesting. It is a very interesting book, though, when you think about it. Most of the world is feel good about everything. We got to feel good about an athlete. We got to feel good about this or that. We're kind of saying, look, part of the beauty of being a sports fan is dealing with the loss. And we're talking about it. And I think it's a great idea, and I think somebody who really loves the games gets emotion out of it. Honest to God. But, Dave, hats off to you most. You're the orchestrator of this.
Well, so. I appreciate it, but, we've all, done a tremendous job with this, and the stories and the angles. I'm going to send out a PDF to you guys so you can see the whole thing together. But it is just it's just a great collection. I just got the final chapter from Sam Rich, the lawyer and brother of Tom Rich, the super agent of the 70s and 80s, and he did such a phenomenal job on the Pittsburgh drug trials. He was one of the lead lawyers. He represented 7 of the baseball players there. And to get his inside thoughts of the strategies he used. And, I mean, usually when you hear about the Pittsburgh drug trials, it's a couple paragraphs. This guy gives you the strategies involved in it, why he thinks the eventual outcome happened as it did, and the effects it had on both the Pirates and baseball in general, and Dave Parker, who was one of his lead clients, Dave Parker's Hall of Fame chances.
Right.
I mean, just a phenomenal read. And we've mentioned before, I mean, Gary, you knocked it out of the park talking about the 93 Penguins and making me look at it differently as far as why maybe it wasn't the upset we all thought it was in 93. And I thought that was a hell of an interesting look. And your Con Lewis look, how it built up with both careers intertwining was phenomenal, and then tying it up, comparing it to the Moore loss of Foreman was phenomenal. And Fletch, that lead chapter, the 21 chapter, is just incredible. I mean, it's the perfect. I couldn't imagine a more perfect lead chapter. And what you wrote up on Mike Webster and what his true effect on the game was. I mean, I again couldn't expect anything better out of that. I was floored by all four chapters, as I was with just about every chapter in that book. Well, not just about every chapter in that book. It all just has great, interesting twists on everything, and I think people.
The 21's the anchor. That's kind of the theme through the whole book, and so that chapter's an interesting one. That's kind of the anchor of it. Which I guess Fletch you did, and the Webster thing's that's a sad one. But,
it's really sad.
A lot of this is life is. There's a lot of sadness in life. So I mean, if you're going to be a sports fan too, and Pittsburgh's actually had quite a bit of success. When I think about that versus a city of this size or some other cities, Pittsburgh's had a lot of success. But I mean, the negative things that happen. I don't know. I guess if you're really a sports fan, you want those too. So I think it's.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: your championships aren't as sweet without the loss.
Right.
And it's part of the story. I mean, Gabe Rivera is part of the story of Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Roberto Clemente, Michelle Briere, Josh Gibson. Phenomenal job by Tom Rooney and Josh's great-grandson, Sean Gibson, who is the head of the foundation. A look at what could have been in 1938 when it was talked about potentially joining the Pirates. I mean, we wouldn't have been talking about the Yankees in the 40s and 50s. You'd have been talking about the Pirates that came through. But, I mean, this is part of the story. You can't tell the story of Pittsburgh without talking about the 72 wild pitch or the 92 for Francisco Cabrera. It brings us together as close as the championships do. I remember the conversation you and I had, Fletch, after the 92 game, as clearly as I remember the conversation after the 1990 Stanley Cup. And, both, to me, were equally as important to the story of Pittsburgh.
But it also, it's funny, Dave, because it really is about friendship. Because in both of those cases, the victory in the first Stanley Cup, there was nobody else I wanted to talk to but you. And the same thing with 92. It was like, this is the person I need to work this thing through. And it's something that the thing. Here's my dream with this book, boys. When we're at Giant Eagle, that at some point we hear that announcement: clean up on aisle 6. If they do that when we're there, damn it, we've made it.
Well, I'll tell you what, that would be the dream. Somebody will call me a busher, call you a busher. That'll be a dream there. All right, but I'll tell you what, my friends, this is going to be a great partnership, and this is going to do a lot of good to the foundation. I think people are
going to help a lot of kids, which is really makes me happy.
Exactly. It makes it all worth it. And when I get the books look like, and I have a call next week with them to finalize some things, but it looks like the books are going to come out early to mid-October. Since everything has kind of changed here and the direction, it's going to take an extra month to get everything moving. But we will all get a freebie. And Gary, if you can't make it down, I'll pass it out to you. But what I would
I'm going to try.
I'll
try. No, I think if you give me notice, I will try to make.
Well,
I'm really interested to make a number of things. So yes, yeah.
Well, I will send out as soon as I find out about when it'll come down. I want us all to meet, all 13 of us, to meet at the Red Ring. There is no more Frank and Wally's and Molly's. So let's meet at the Red Ring, pass out the books, and we can all give a salute, a cheer.
Good to me. Sounds good.
To this book.
Yep.
That would be my dream.
Yep.
So, with that, my friends, until next week.
Dave, congratulations. You were the champion behind this. You organized all the parties. You had the idea. You brought us together back again. Hats off to you. Okay?
Well,
I honestly think there'll be copycats. I think a lot of other cities will think about the fact that, you know what, we don't talk about the negative all that often. You need to.
All I know, when I was on Stan Savran last week talking about it, he sent me an email after he had such an incredible reaction to it that the next day he spent a whole segment on nothing but asking people's worst sports moments. Then he talked about it on his WDV segment the next morning. So
I think it's
going to have a
going
great
forward
reaction.
for all of our efforts.
Yeah.
Very well-respected, credible guy. So
absolutely. So it's going to be some fun. But next week, I think might be time to maybe talk a little about the effects of the trade deadline and who we see heading into October fighting for a World Series title. Does that sound good, gentlemen?
Sounds good.
And then we'll have a second secret subject.
So as long as I'm not on double secret probation, I'm okay.
It could be. You know what we think. Had we touched the $55 million biorhythmic food chamber machine, what meals would come up for us?
Be out of here faster than. Go ahead, Dave. Finish that thought.
I can't, man. I can't.
All right.
I'm editing in my head. Nothing's coming up clean.
Okay.
Oh, man. All right, gentlemen. You have a good evening.
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Enjoyed it again.
See you guys.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Bye.